You think the money sitting in your bank account belongs to you? Wrong, dead wrong. Legally speaking, the exact second you hand cash over the teller counter or click transfer into your savings account, your ownership rights to that money evaporate. It is no longer your asset. Sounds insane, right? But this is the cold, hard reality of the modern financial system that no personal banker will ever admit to your face. When you deposit money, you are performing a legal act called unsecured lending. That money becomes the bank's property. And you get an IOU, a digital number on a screen that effectively says, "We owe you this amount, and we'll pay it back, if we can." Pay close attention to that phrase, if we can. In bankruptcy law, you are classified as an unsecured creditor. This means when the bank goes belly up, you are at the back of the line. Behind the IRS, behind the secured creditors, behind executive bonuses, and absolutely behind the derivatives, contracts worth billions of dollars. Most Americans naively believe, "Oh, but my money is sitting in a vault." No, it's not. Your money was immediately invested by the bank. They used it to buy government bonds, issue mortgages, and, most dangerously, to fund commercial real estate loans. And this is where we have to talk about the real trap. The current banking system doesn't run on reserves. It runs on confidence. And the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010, born from the ashes of the 2008 crisis, completely changed the rules of the game. Before 2010, when a bank died, the government used taxpayer money to save it. That was a bailout. The public was furious, protests erupted. So Washington came up with a more humane solution. Instead of picking the taxpayer's pocket, they decided to pick the depositor's pocket. They call it a bail-in. A bail-in legally allows a failing bank to confiscate a portion of your deposits to recapitalize itself, converting your cash into bank stock. Stock that, at that moment, is likely worth about as much as toilet paper. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is current law. It is written in black and white in the crisis resolution playbooks of the FDIC and the Bank of England. The legal framework is set. The trap is armed. Now, they just need a victim, and unfortunately, that victim could be your life savings. But the law is just the gun. To pull the trigger, you need a catalyst, and that catalyst is counting down to 2026. Why 2026? Why am I so certain about this timeline? Look at the commercial real estate, CRE market. It is the single biggest ticking time bomb in modern financial history. Over the last decade, when interest rates were near zero, developers borrowed like maniacs to build office towers and malls. Then the pandemic hit. Remote work became the norm. Vacancy rates in major US cities are at record highs. Buildings once valued at $100 million are now selling for $40 or $50 million. But the problem isn't just falling asset values. The problem is the debt. Between now and the end of 2026, approximately $1.5 trillion in commercial real estate debt matures. These loans were signed when rates were 3% or 4%. Now, if they want to refinance, they're looking at 7% or 8%. Do the simple math. Rental income is down 30% because the building is half empty, but the interest payments are doubling. What's the result? Mass default. And who holds the bag on this toxic debt? It is not the too big to fail giants like JP Morgan or Bank of America. They offloaded this risk years ago. The ones holding the grenade are the regional banks, the exact institutions where Main Street America and small businesses keep their operating cash. These banks are sitting on a mountain of unrealized losses. On the books, they play a game called extend and pretend. They act like the loans are still good. But by 2026, when that wall of debt maturity collapses, the game ends. They will be forced to mark those assets to market. Their equity will be wiped out overnight. They will become insolvent, and what do you think happens next? Do you think the Fed will print money to save them? No. Inflation is the monster the Fed still hasn't tamed. Printing trillions to save regional banks is political and economic suicide. They won't do it. They will choose the path of least resistance, the path paved by the law. They will trigger the bail-in. But if you're sitting there thinking, the government would never let that happen to regular people, then the next section is going to completely shatter that naive belief. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't a prediction. It is history that played out. brutal and cold, right in front of the world's eyes, while most of us chose to look away. Friday, March 15th, 2013. In Cyprus, a developed nation within the European Union, people finished their work week and headed home for the weekend. Restaurants were packed, the streets were buzzing. Everything was normal. Their bank apps showed their full balances. They went to sleep with total faith that their money was safe. But when they woke up the next morning, the world had changed. The banks were shuttered. ATMs went dark. Online transfers were frozen. The government announced an unprecedented state of emergency, and by Tuesday, when the banks finally reopened, the nightmare officially began. Anyone with a balance over $100,000 had 47.5% of their excess money immediately confiscated. Listen to me closely. 47.5%. If you had $200,000 saved for retirement, the bank effectively reached in and stole $47,500. In the blink of an eye, no negotiation, no court hearing, no appeal. They called it a stability levy. Let's call it what it really was: legalized robbery. The people of Cyprus were devastated. Small businesses went under because they couldn't make payroll. Life savings evaporated. And here is the most critical thing you need to etch into your brain. The world did nothing. The European Union nodded in approval. The IMF applauded. They viewed Cyprus as the perfect test run for a new crisis management model. You might be telling yourself, that's Cyprus, a tiny island. That could never happen in America, the financial capital of the world. That is the exact toxic thought that will bankrupt you. Because right here in the United States, the execution order on your assets was signed back in 2010. It's buried deep within the thousands of pages of the Dodd-Frank Act, under a boring, bureaucratic name, Orderly Liquidation Authority, Title II. Its purpose is explicitly stated: no more taxpayer bailouts. So where does the money come from to handle a dead bank? The answer is in the term bail-in. They will convert the bank's debt into equity. And who is the creditor? You. Let me rip off the final mask of this system. When you opened your bank account, you didn't read the 50-page terms and conditions with the microscopic font, did you? If you had, you would have seen a spine-chilling reality. In the hierarchy of payouts when a bank fails, the status of the depositor is incredibly low. Who gets paid first? Administrative costs and taxes. Next are the secured creditors. And crucially, standing right on top of you are the derivative counterparties. The big banks are currently gambling trillions in the derivatives market. When they lose, the law prioritizes paying off those casino bets before paying you back your deposits. You, the depositor, are an unsecured creditor. You are the last line of defense. You are the meat shield for Wall Street's recklessness. But I have FDIC insurance. My $250,000 is guaranteed. That is the lullaby 99% of Americans use to sing themselves to sleep. Let's do some elementary school math. Total deposits in the U.S. banking system currently sit at over $18 trillion. Do you know how much money the FDIC Deposit Insurance Fund actually holds? A little over $120 billion. The coverage ratio is less than 1%. The FDIC is like a single paper napkin trying to stop a tsunami. It works fine if one or two small banks fail. But the 2026 scenario I warned you about is a domino collapse of dozens of regional banks due to the real estate crisis. When that tsunami hits, the FDIC fund will evaporate in hours. At that point, the FDIC has two choices. One, beg Congress to print more money, which takes weeks of debate and triggers hyperinflation, turning the money you eventually get back into confetti. Two, trigger the bail-in immediately. They will freeze accounts, announce a restructuring, and turn your cash balance into stock in a dying bank. You will receive a stock certificate instead of cash to buy groceries or pay your electric bill. It is the perfect trap. The law is on their side, the math is against you, and the system is designed to preserve the financial structure, not to preserve you. But hold on, don't turn this video off in despair. This naked truth isn't meant to paralyze you with fear, it's meant to slap you awake, because in every crisis, while the masses panic and lose everything, there is always a small group who understand the rules. They don't just survive. They stand on the receiving end of the wealth transfer. They see opportunity where others see apocalypse. And this is why those with financial survival skills don't just make it through. They get rich in the chaos. And I'm going to show you exactly how they do that right now. A financial collapse is like a forest fire. It burns away the dead wood, the naive investors, but it clears the ground for new, stronger growth. The crash only kills those who are unprepared. But for those with a plan, they aren't afraid. They are hunting. You don't need to be a Wall Street genius to escape this trap. You just need to build a defensive system that I call the 3-layer cash firewall. This is how smart money is moving right now, while the herd is still asleep at the wheel. Layer 1, the operational layer. Don't be extreme and pull all your cash out to stuff under a mattress. You still need a bank to function in society. But shift your mindset. A bank is a payment utility, not a storage facility. Keep only 1 to 2 months of living expenses in your checking account. If that bank collapses and freezes for a few weeks, you won't starve. Any idle cash above that number must be moved immediately off the bank's balance sheet. Layer 2, the safe liquidity layer. This is where you park your emergency fund and dry powder for investing. Instead of leaving it in a savings account exposed to bail-in risk, move it to T-bills, treasury bills, or government money market funds at a major brokerage. Why? Because here is the technical key your banker won't tell you. When you buy T-bills or money market shares, those are segregated assets. The brokerage is just the custodian. If the brokerage goes bankrupt, those assets are not part of their liquidation estate. No one can seize them to pay debts. They remain 100% yours. This is how you create a legal entity that shields your money from systemic banking risk. Layer 3, the counterparty-free layer. This is the ultimate insurance for the worst-case scenario, when the fiat currency system itself starts to wobble. Own physical gold and Bitcoin, held in cold storage. Why do I call this counterparty-free? Because with gold in your hand and Bitcoin on a hardware wallet, you don't need anyone to fulfill a promise to pay you. There is no counterparty risk, no bail-in, no ability to freeze it with a government mouse click. That is absolute financial sovereignty. When you set up these 3 layers, you are no longer a victim. You have built your bunker before the bombs start falling. But I have to warn you, 2026 is not far away. In the financial world, 12 months is a blink of an eye. The cracks in commercial real estate are widening every single day. Banks are quietly tightening credit. The wealthy are silently pulling their capital. The exit door is slowly closing. Right after this video ends, I want you to do one thing. Not tomorrow, today. Log into all your bank accounts. Sum up your total cash exposure. Ask yourself, if tomorrow morning this number is frozen or cut by 30%, what happens to my life? If the answer makes you break out in a cold sweat, then you know what you have to do. Do not let laziness destroy the wealth you spent a lifetime building. Don't believe the reassuring lies on TV. Believe the laws that are already written and the capital that is already fleeing. Wealth isn't created or destroyed in a crash. It just transfers from the hands of the ignorant to the hands of the protected. Make sure you are on the receiving end of this great wealth transfer. If you want a step-by-step breakdown on how to buy T-bills to avoid bank risk, or how to set up the most secure cold storage, comment, "I am ready," down below. If enough of you are serious about this, I will make a tutorial video that walks you through it. Be the hand. Stay sharp. Be prepared. And I'll see you on the other side of the crisis.